Close your eyes for a moment. Edo, Japan, the year 1700. 1 million people, the largest city on earth, packed into wooden row houses so tight a man lying down could touch both walls. Paper windows, shared wells, one privy serving 20 families, a few steps from where the children sleep. No sewers like Rome built, no soap as Europe knew it. Summer heat thick enough to chew, and the whole city pressed together, wall against wall, breath against breath. By every law of medicine, this city should have been a graveyard. Typhoid in the wells, dysentery in the alleys, plague riding in on every ship, one contaminated bucket, one bad summer, and 1 million people start dying. But here's what actually happened. Edo didn't rot. While European capitals buried their dead in pits, carts rolling through the streets, bells ringing, houses nailed shut, Edo's markets stayed open and its wells stayed drinkable. The plague that emptied whole quarters of London never took root here at all. And the real surprise isn't that Edo survived. It's that Europe had more of everything, more stone, more doctors, more laws. And it still wasn't enough. London, 1665, a city 1/3 Edo's size, with stone buildings, universities, a college of physicians, and 1,000 years of Roman engineering behind it. In 18 months, plague killed roughly 100,000 people, one Londoner in 4. The response was desperate, red crosses on doors, families sealed inside with their dying, watchmen posted to keep them there, and this wasn't new. 3 centuries earlier, the Black Death had crossed Europe like a scythe. 50 million dead, somewhere between 1/3 and half of the entire continent. Europe had physicians, Europe had laws, Europe had a church on every corner. What it didn't have was a single great city that could keep itself clean. Now look at Edo again, because the numbers should have made it worse, far worse. The commoners' districts crammed hundreds of thousands of people onto a sliver of the city's land. Whole families in single rooms, opening onto alleys you could cross in 2 steps. No sewer network, no germ theory, no quarantine board, no street cleaning department, nothing a European engineer would recognize as public health. And yet, the filth that defined every great city of Europe, the reeking gutters, the waste running past food stalls, the rivers doubling as drains, simply wasn't there. Foreign visitors kept writing it down again and again because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. If you've ever lived in a crowded apartment block or shared a barracks, a ship's berth, a work camp, you know this arithmetic. Small space, many bodies, shared water. You know how fast one person's carelessness becomes everyone's problem. 1 million people is 1 million chances a day for the system to fail. So, what did Edo know that London never figured out? First, the myth. Hollywood gives us feudal Japan as mud and blood, filthy villages, brutal samurai, peasants dying in the dirt. The men who actually walked those streets tell a different story. In 1585, a Portuguese Jesuit named Luis Frois wrote an entire treatise comparing European and Japanese daily life, custom by custom. Europeans, he admitted, bathe rarely. The Japanese bathe constantly, in water hot enough to hurt even in winter, and think nothing of it. A century later, the German physician Engelbert Kämpfer traveled the great highway into Edo and marveled at what he found. Roads swept clean, inns spotless, and everyone, down to the poorest porter, washed and presentable. Now remember what European medicine believed in those same years. Doctors were warning patients that hot water opened the pores and let disease into the body. Bathing was considered a risk. So, at the exact moment a Japanese laborer was ending his day in a scalding public bath, A European physician was advising his king to avoid water entirely. One civilization feared washing. The other practically worshipped with it. But culture alone doesn't keep a million-person city alive. For that, you need a system, and Edo's system starts in the strangest place imaginable. In Edo, human waste wasn't garbage. It was merchandise. Every bucket of it was collected, purchased, and hauled out of the city because the farms ringing Edo ran on fertilizer. Fertilizer was scarce, and night soil, as it was politely called, was the engine connecting the world's biggest city to the fields that fed it. Farmers signed contracts with landlords. Brokers competed for collection rights. A landlord with enough tenants could earn more from their privies than from their rent. And it gets better. The trade had price tiers, waste from a feudal lord's mansion, rich diets, polished rice, plenty of fish, sold at a premium. A poor alley fetched a poor price. Somewhere in Edo, a broker was literally judging your household by what came out of it. Laugh if you want. Then follow the logic. If waste has a price, nobody dumps it in the street. Nobody pours it in the river. Nothing sits. Nothing festers, nothing seeps into the wells. London paid men to carry its filth away, and mostly they didn't. Edo made filth worth money, and the problem carried itself out of the city every single morning. Then there's the water. In 1653, Edo cut a channel from the Tama River and ran it 43 kilometers across the plateau. Dug by hand, with hose and baskets, the main trench finished in well under a year. From there, fresh upland water flowed through a buried web of wooden pipes into thousands of neighborhood wells. Sit with that image for a second. While Londoners were drinking from the same Thames they emptied their pots into, a barefoot laborer in Edo was drawing clean mountain water from a plumbing network running beneath the most crowded city on earth. And keeping it clean was nobody's job. Which is to say, it was everybody's job. Wells had covers, cleaning days, and neighborhood rules. And everyone knew exactly who broke them. And then, the baths. Edo's first public bathhouse opened in 1591, and the city never looked back. By the late Edo period, there were hundreds of them packed every evening, entry costing about as much as a cup of tea. For samurai, cleanliness wasn't vanity. It was readiness, hair oiled and bound, robes changed, body scrubbed. The discipline of men who believed death could come any day and intended to meet it presentable. For everyone else, the enforcement was simpler. Shame. In a row house where every family hears every argument through the walls, where your neighbors share your well, your privy, your alley. Being the dirty household was never a private failing. It was a public one. No inspectors, no fines, just the oldest enforcement mechanism on earth, the eyes of people who know exactly who you are. Now, historians genuinely argue about why this worked. Some point to religion, Shinto, where impurity, kegare, is the closest thing to sin, where you rinse your hands and mouth before approaching a shrine, where washing is a form of prayer. Others say, forget the theology. It was economics all the way down. Fertilizer money, water fees, landlord contracts. Clean because it paid. The evidence honestly supports both readings. Where do you land, belief or business? Tell me in the comments. Here's my favorite piece of evidence, and it's hiding inside the language itself. In Japanese, the word kirei means beautiful. The same word means clean. Not two similar words, the same word. A civilization folded those two ideas into a single sound, and every child who learns to speak absorbs the equation without ever being taught it. If this kind of depth is what you come here for, a like genuinely helps this channel keep going. Now, walk through London in those same years, because the contrast is the whole story. Chamber pots emptied from upstairs windows onto the street below. Pedestrians learned to hug the walls. Open gutters running past the bread stalls. The Thames serving as water supply and sewer at once. Physicians in wax coats blaming the smell of the air while drinking the water that was actually killing them. And it wasn't stupidity. This is the civilization that built cathedrals, universities, printing presses. Hygiene simply had no owner. No one profited from a clean street, so no street stayed clean. Every response arrived after the catastrophe, always reacting, never preventing. But be honest about Edo too, because it was no fortress. Smallpox came for Japan's children generation after generation, and there was no system that could stop it. When cholera finally arrived on foreign ships in 1858, it killed tens of thousands in Edo in a single terrible summer. The machinery had never met a disease that moved that fast. And the city's true nightmare was never sickness at all. It was fire. The people of Edo had a saying: fires and brawls are the flowers of Edo. On one night in 1657, a single blaze killed roughly as many people as London's plague did in a year and a half. Every civilization pays its tax somewhere. Edo paid in flame. But filth was the one bill Edo almost never paid. Step back and the pattern becomes clear. Two civilizations, same bacteria, same crowding, same mortal stakes. One treated cleanliness as personal preference and paid for it in plague pits. The other wired cleanliness into everything, into money, into prayer, into real estate, into the very word for beautiful, until no one had to remember to care because the whole city cared automatically. That's the difference. Not knowledge, not technology, design, prevention woven so deep into daily life that it needed no heroes and asked for no luck. So, picture Edo at dusk. A carpenter walks home through an alley 2 steps wide. At his door, he slips off his sandals. The street stays outside. It always stays outside. Down the block, steam climbs from the bathhouse chimney, and half the neighborhood is already inside, shoulder to shoulder in the hot water, arguing about nothing. A broker's boat slides down the river, loaded, bound for the farms. Nobody in this scene knows what a germ is. Not one of them could explain why any of it works. They just know this is how you live. The next time you take your shoes off at the door, remember, you're repeating a decision a city made 4 centuries ago. A quiet habit that did what all the physicians of Europe couldn't. If your family carries a habit like that, something passed down, never explained, that just works. I'd genuinely like to read it in the comments. And if the real story of how feudal Japan survived is what you came for, the samurai, the farmers, the brokers, the system, this channel was built for you. Subscribe and you'll see what comes next. Because a city that turned filth into money was only the beginning. Wait until you see what Edo did with fire.